The Galactic Union had seen many species rise and fall, but humans were different. They arrived with open hands, speaking of diplomacy, trade, and unity. Their ambassador, Daniel Carter, stood before the grand assembly of alien leaders, his voice calm and measured. "We come in peace," he said. "Humanity seeks friendship, not war." Murmurs spread through the massive hall. Some species, like the diplomatic Arvani, nodded in approval. Others, like the warlike Selfar, scoffed in disgust. "Peace." One Selfar commander growled. "We have seen your kind before. Weak, fragile, desperate for protection. What could you possibly offer us?" Daniel smiled, unfazed. "Understanding. Cooperation. A future where all species thrive together." The Galactic Union had no reason to fear humans. Their homeworld, Earth, was isolated on the edge of the galaxy. They had no great fleets, no powerful weapons. Their technology was decades behind most major civilizations. If war broke out, humans would be wiped out in days. The meeting ended with agreements to explore trade and research partnerships. Humanity was officially recognized as a minor member of the Union. But behind the scenes, many alien factions dismissed them entirely. "They are nothing," one Taveri diplomat whispered to his colleague. "They have no military strength, no real influence. They will serve as workers, nothing more." As the humans left the assembly, Daniel noticed the hidden smiles and mocking glances. He had seen that look before, underestimation. He simply nodded. "They think we're weak," he murmured to his aide. "Let them think that for now." The attack. 3 days later, a human delegation was invited aboard the Selfar flagship, the Kraldomak, to discuss trade routes. It was supposed to be a peaceful negotiation. The humans arrived unarmed, trusting the Union's promise of safety. Then, without warning, the first shot was fired. Security footage later showed what happened. A Selfar warrior, standing behind the human delegation, suddenly drew his plasma blade and slashed forward. The human diplomat never had a chance. His body crumpled, lifeless, before the others could react. Panic erupted. The Selfar guards raised their weapons, and before the humans could even understand what was happening, they were all gunned down. The Galactic Union was horrified when the news spread. The Selfar claimed it was an accident, a misunderstanding. They offered an apology, calling it the actions of a rogue warrior. But Earth was silent. The human ambassadors who remained in the Union were recalled. Their ships vanished from diplomatic space stations. No response came from their government. "They will beg for forgiveness," the Taveri diplomat laughed. "What else can they do?" But then, something strange happened. 2 Selfar scout ships went missing along the outer rim. No distress signals, no wreckage, just gone. Galactic leaders ignored it at first. Surely it was just an accident. But then, a Taveri freighter disappeared. Then a patrol fleet. Something was happening. And for the first time, the Galactic Union began to wonder, what if the humans weren't as weak as they thought? The Galactic Union expected humans to respond with fear. They had been humiliated, their diplomats slaughtered like cattle. Most species, when faced with such an event, would either beg for mercy or seek revenge with reckless desperation. But humanity did neither. Instead, they disappeared. After the massacre aboard the Selfar flagship, Earth recalled all its ambassadors and shut down communication channels. Their ships, once seen in Union trading hubs, were gone. The bustling human colonies that had begun to integrate into the Union fell silent. It was as if humanity had simply vanished into the void. For weeks, the Union debated. The Selfar, smug and confident, believed they had put the humans in their place. They know their weakness now. Supreme Warlord Vrak of the Selfar sneered in a Union meeting. "They will not dare challenge us." But not everyone was convinced. "Something is wrong," whispered Grand Strategist Euler of the Arvani. "No species simply accepts defeat without response." The Union had been preparing for a groveling plea from Earth. Maybe they would beg for mercy, ask for reparations, or even surrender their colonies to the Union. But instead, the humans did nothing. And that terrified them. The first warning. A month passed. Then, strange reports began to trickle in. A HFY outpost on the edge of their empire sent out a distress signal. Then it went silent. A patrol ship was sent to investigate. It arrived to find nothing but debris. Shattered metal, bodies floating in space. The base was completely wiped out, with no sign of the attackers. The HFY High Command dismissed it as pirates. An unfortunate accident, they told the Union. Nothing more. But then it happened again. And again. One by one. HFY outposts, convoys, and patrols disappeared. No warnings, no survivors. The only clue was a brief, eerie transmission from a Taveri warship before it was destroyed. No life signs detected. Wait, something's here. It's silence. The Galactic Union finally started to panic. This was not a random accident. This was something deliberate, something precise. But no one could prove it was the humans. There were no demands, no declarations of war, no threats. Just cold, calculated elimination. They are too weak for this, argued the Taveri diplomats. They do not have the fleet, the technology, or the numbers. But the Arvani strategist, Euler, was not convinced. He had studied humans more closely than others. And the more he thought about their silence, the more uneasy he became. They are hiding, he murmured. They are waiting. The mistake that changed everything. Growing desperate, the HFY decided to send a fleet toward the Sol system, the heart of humanity. Their goal was simple, to force a response. They believed that if they appeared strong, the humans would surrender. A fleet of 20 HFY warships entered human space, broadcasting a single message. Humanity, kneel before the HFY. Submit, and you may yet live. For hours, there was no response. The warships approached Earth, confident, arrogant. Their weapons were charged, ready to strike if necessary. Then, without warning, their sensors went dark. All at once, their engines failed. Their shields dropped. Their targeting systems refused to respond. And then, from the darkness of space, human warships emerged. Not the clunky, outdated ships the Union had once seen. No, these were something else. Silent, deadly, unrecognizable. Before the HFY could react, the first human torpedoes struck. Explosions erupted across the fleet. One by one, the mighty HFY warships fell, torn apart like fragile toys. Their commanders screamed for backup, but no signals got through. The humans had jammed everything. Within minutes, the entire fleet was gone. Not a single HFY ship remained. The last transmission received from the fleet was a chilling whisper from a dying commander. We were wrong. They were never weak. Then silence. The Galactic Union had underestimated humanity. Now, it was too late. The destruction of the HFY fleet sent shockwaves across the Galactic Union. The species who had laughed at humanity's supposed weakness now sat in stunned silence. Entire warships obliterated, veteran commanders slaughtered, and yet no declaration of war, no grand speech, no threats. Just cold, calculated elimination. Panic spread like wildfire. Union diplomats scrambled to understand what had happened. How? They demanded. How could humans, a species we deemed primitive, execute such precise, devastating attacks? Some argued it was luck, a fluke, perhaps even sabotage from within the HFY ranks. But deep down, the Union leaders knew the truth. Humanity had been hiding its true strength. Grand strategist Euler, the Arvani tactician who had warned the Union before, sat in his chamber replaying the final transmission of the destroyed fleet over and over again. The static-ridden voice of the HFY commander echoed in his mind. We were wrong. They were never weak. A chill ran through him. The humans had not just responded. They had planned this. But how long had they been preparing? How long had they been waiting for an enemy foolish enough to push them too far? Euler knew only one thing for certain. The Union had made a fatal mistake. Meanwhile, across Union space, fear took hold. The HFY, once the most aggressive warlords of the Union, were now silent. Their high command had gone into lockdown. No ships left their borders, no diplomats attended meetings. They had boasted that humanity would kneel. Now, they cowered behind their defenses, praying that humans would not come for them next. Other species were just as terrified. The Tavari, who had once mocked the weak primates, quietly reinforced their fleets. The Virkai, a proud warrior race, sent emissaries to Earth, hoping to negotiate before it was too late. Even the neutral commerce guilds whispered among themselves, unsure whether to continue trade with humanity or sever all ties. But the humans gave no response, no signals, no threats. They simply existed, an unseen force lurking in the shadows. The silence was more terrifying than an open declaration of war. Some Union leaders, desperate to avoid complete panic, insisted on sending another fleet, not to attack, but to communicate, to try and understand what humanity wanted. But others, particularly those who had witnessed humanity's brutality firsthand, urged caution. "We do not provoke a sleeping beast," one Tavari admiral warned. "We have already angered it once." But in the heart of Seoul, deep within the fortified command centers of Earth, humanity was not resting. In underground bunkers and high-orbit stations, human generals, admirals, and strategists worked tirelessly. They had been prepared for this. They had always been prepared. The massacre of their diplomats had not been forgotten. It had been avenged. But their work was not yet complete. Humanity did not believe in half measures. If the Union had been foolish enough to strike them, then they had to learn the full consequences of their mistake. Plans that had been in place for decades, once considered contingency operations, were now fully in motion. Their enemies thought they had won when they killed a few defenseless humans in a diplomatic hall. But humans did not fight with words. They fought with steel, fire, and silence. The war had not been declared by them, but it would end on their terms. The next move was humanity's to make, and when they struck again, the galaxy would tremble. The silence from humanity was deafening. No threats, no demands, just the chilling absence of communication. It was as if humanity was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Across the Galactic Union, fear took hold. Some species whispered among themselves, urging their leaders to reach out to Earth before it was too late. Others prepared for the worst, reinforcing their defenses, knowing deep down it would not be enough. The HFY, once the most feared warriors in the Union, had locked down their borders. Their mighty fleets no longer patrolled the stars. Instead, they hid, desperately trying to recover from their humiliating defeat. The Tavari, who had once laughed at humanity, now sent urgent envoys, pleading for negotiations. But the humans did not respond. Their silence was their message. "We decide when this ends." In the Union's High Council, panic grew. The destruction of the HFY fleet had been swift and merciless. Strategists replayed the battle footage, analyzing every detail. It made no sense. Humans had not fielded massive warships or superior firepower. Instead, they had used precision, striking where it hurt the most, dismantling the enemy without wasting a single shot. It was not the attack of a desperate species. It was the strike of a predator that had been underestimated for too long. Grand strategist Euler, one of the few who had warned against provoking humanity, sat in silence. He knew what the others refused to admit. This was not a war that could be won. Humanity was not seeking territory or resources. They were sending a message written in fire and destruction. And the Union had no idea how to respond. As fear spread, desperate voices rose in the council chambers. Some demanded a second offensive, believing humanity could still be crushed. Others pleaded for surrender, hoping to avoid complete annihilation. But the truth was clear. They were no longer in control. The Union had fired the first shot, but now it was humanity's turn. And when they moved again, the galaxy would never be the same. The waiting was over. Humanity had remained silent for too long, watching as the Galactic Union scrambled in fear, debating whether to fight or surrender. But humans were not ones to sit idly by when war was upon them. And so, when the first human fleet emerged from the darkness of space, the galaxy held its breath. There were no grand declarations, no negotiations, only cold, calculated retaliation. The Taveri outpost on the edge of the galactic core was the first to fall. It happened so quickly that the Union barely had time to register the attack. One moment, the outpost was broadcasting its usual traffic control signals. The next, its transmissions were replaced with static. No distress calls, no signs of battle, just eerie silence. When Union scouts arrived hours later, all they found were empty stations, every Taveri soldier and officer gone. The outpost was intact, its defenses untouched, but its inhabitants had vanished without a trace. The message was clear: we can take everything from you without firing a single shot. Panic spread like wildfire. The Union scrambled to prepare for an invasion. But where would the humans strike next? Every system near human-controlled space braced for impact. Fleets mobilized, planetary defenses were reinforced, and evacuation plans were drawn up. But the next strike did not come where they expected. Instead, it came deep within Union territory, on the HFY homeworld itself. The HFY had once been the most feared warriors of the Union, but after their crushing defeat, they had hidden behind their defenses, confident that their homeworld was untouchable. They were wrong. Without warning, the skies above their capital darkened as human ships descended. The HFY fleet, battered and desperate, scrambled to intercept, but the humans did not engage in open combat. Instead, they deployed their forces in a way that no one had ever seen before. Stealth ships slipped past defenses, striking key targets with surgical precision. Entire government facilities went dark, communications collapsed, and power grids failed. It was chaos. The HFY warlords, once so proud, found themselves blind and helpless. Their fleets floated uselessly in orbit, unable to coordinate. And then, the true horror set in. Across the planet, Xelthar citizens were seized, not killed, not harmed, just taken. Hundreds of thousands vanished overnight, their whereabouts unknown. When the humans finally withdrew, they left behind a chilling warning. We do not seek to destroy. We seek to make you understand. The Union Council was in complete disarray. How had the humans done this? Their ships were smaller, their numbers fewer, yet they moved like ghosts, striking wherever they pleased, leaving nothing but fear in their wake. The Union had assumed this war would be like all others. Battleships clashing, soldiers marching, planets burning. But the humans fought differently. They fought like a species that had survived its own extinction more than once. Desperate, the Council convened in secret. There was only one conclusion they could reach. This war was not winnable. The humans had turned their own arrogance against them. They had let the galaxy believe they were weak, let them fire the first shot. And now, they were proving that there was nothing more terrifying than an enemy who had been underestimated for too long. As the Union scrambled for answers, humanity prepared for its final move. They had made their message clear. But if the Union refused to listen, then the next strike would not be a warning. It would be the end. The Galactic Union was in chaos. The war they had started was no longer under their control. Humanity had struck with precision, taking out key locations without widespread destruction. But the message was clear. This was only the beginning. The council chambers were filled with shouting voices, panic evident in every desperate plea for a solution. The Taveri wanted to surrender. The HFY demanded retaliation, and the other species were paralyzed with fear. No one could agree on the next move. Meanwhile, On the battlefield, things were even worse. The Union's mighty fleets, once considered the most powerful in the galaxy, were being dismantled piece by piece. Every attempt to launch an offensive was met with unexpected counterattacks. Ships vanished in deep space, entire battalions disappeared from the battlefield, and defenses were breached without any signs of approaching forces. It was as if the humans could see every move before it even happened. Then came the broadcasts. Every planet in the Union received the same message, transmitted on all frequencies. It was a simple video, one that sent shivers through the highest ranks of power. The footage showed Union prisoners, the same soldiers and leaders who had once mocked humanity, but they were not harmed. No torture, no violence, just a quiet room where they sat and spoke. And what they said broke the Union spirit. "They let us go," one Taveri general admitted, his voice shaking. "They could have killed us all, but they didn't. They told us to return with a message." A Xelfar warrior, once feared across the stars, spoke next. "We thought they would be like us. Seek revenge, seek blood. But they fight differently. They don't need to destroy us to win. They only need to make us afraid." The final words came from a high-ranking Union strategist, a being who had led countless wars. His eyes were hollow, his voice weak. "We never understood them. We thought they were weak because they spoke of peace. But peace was never their weakness. It was their warning. And we didn't listen." The message was clear. Humanity had never wanted war, but now that it had begun, they would end it on their terms. The Union had pushed too far, and now they were facing an enemy unlike any other. An enemy who fought not for conquest, but for survival. And a species that fights for survival never fights fair. The council chambers fell silent. The war was no longer about pride or power. It was about one simple truth. The Union had made a terrible mistake, and they were running out of time to fix it. The Galactic Union had never known fear like this before. Their fleets were in ruins, their soldiers demoralized, and their once mighty war machine had been dismantled with terrifying precision. But the most chilling part wasn't the destruction, it was the restraint. Humanity had shown mercy. Despite being provoked, attacked, and betrayed, they had not wiped planets clean, had not unleashed planet-destroying weapons, had not reduced entire species to ashes. Instead, they had done something far worse. They had proven they could. The war room of the Union's High Council was deathly silent. The members sat frozen, watching the latest footage from the front lines. What they saw made their blood run cold. The remnants of the Union's largest fleet, once numbering in the thousands, were drifting lifelessly in the void. Not destroyed, not burning, but disabled. Every single warship, from the smallest fighter to the grandest dreadnought, had been rendered useless. Their weapons refused to fire. Their engines would not restart. Their shields had collapsed without a single visible shot being fired. How? How did they do this? One of the admirals whispered, his voice barely audible. The answer came in the form of a single incoming transmission. No encryption, no special codes, just a simple human face staring back at them. A woman in a dark uniform, her expression unreadable. Behind her, stars gleamed through the viewport of a warship, one of many that now surrounded the last strongholds of the Union. "You asked for war," she said, her voice calm. "And we gave you war. But now, it is over." The council members stiffened. Some wanted to protest, to claim they could still fight. But they all knew the truth. They had already lost. The woman continued, "We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Consider this your only warning. Next time, we will not be so patient." With that, the transmission cut out. The silence in the war room stretched on, heavy and suffocating. No one dared to speak. Across the galaxy, reports began flooding in. Human ships were vanishing from enemy space. Blockades were dissolving. Outposts that had been under siege were abandoned. It was as if humanity had simply left. And that was what terrified the Union the most. Humanity had not stayed to claim victory. They had not demanded territory or reparations. They had won the war, and then they had walked away. Not because they were weak, not because they were merciful, but because they knew they didn't need to stay. The message was clear. Humanity was done with the Union. But if the Union ever made the same mistake again, humanity would return. And next time, there would be no warnings.